What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video, and back with another rankings video. Going to do the tiered quarterback rankings. In this is going to be for 1 point, minus 4 turnovers. So interception, a fumble is -1. Very, very slight changes. If you move to 2, I believe the biggest one is Daniel Jones, because he loses a lot in fumbles, but for the most part, I mean, the rankings don't change that much. Just thinking you're more like turnover-prone quarterbacks going to move down. Guys like Aaron Rodgers will move a little bit higher if you move to -2 for those turnovers, because he doesn't have as many turnovers, so other quarterbacks move down, he moves up, but for the most part, that's like 1 or 2 changes. So, tier 1, S tier here. We're going to start off with the trio that everyone knows it's going to be. That's Jalen Hurts, that's Patrick Mahomes, and that is Josh Allen. To be honest, I don't care. Like, I really just don't care how you order them. If you want to put Josh Allen first, then Hurts, then Mahomes, you want to put Mahomes first, it really is a personal preference when you get into this range. What I typically do in drafts is say, okay, they're all literally in my rankings, my projections, they're separated by like 1, maybe 2 points, all of them. So they're all the same pick. What I basically do is whoever's last. I never want to be first in this range, and I'm okay missing this range. What we're going to talk about a lot today is you want to get value at the quarterback position. You don't want to lock yourself in and say, oh, quarterback seems decent, I'll take the first one off the board. And then you look back and you're like, wow, like 3 different opportunities I could have had to get a quarterback like a round after ADP. Every single round besides, I guess, round 1, you're going to have an opportunity to draft a quarterback. And so you have many, many chances to get one a little bit behind ADP and to get a really good value. So what I do is, let's say I'm in like because I like the mid to late third. That's what I really like getting these quarterbacks. Even if they project maybe early 3rd round, I just like getting them in the mid to late 3rd. And I really like being the last one. If it happens to go, Allen, then Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts sitting there in the late 3rd, I'm like, awesome, got my first quarterback at a good value. Let's take them. If it happens to be all of them be taken, no problem. We'll go to this next tier. That's how I'm treating this first tier. Is all 3 of these are let's be honest, pretty much guaranteed to finish inside the top 5 in points per game. All of them have true league-winning upside. All could easily finish as the MVP, be someone that you pretty much needed in fantasy, and they just have by far the best chance of doing that and the highest floor. They deserve to be an S tier. If we move down to the next tier, the headliner is Lamar Jackson, and I would personally say that if you really, really wanted to put Lamar into S tier, I actually I wouldn't hate it. I wouldn't do it, but honestly, ADPs are like not too far off when you look at the difference between the top 3 and Lamar. I wouldn't hate it. I just, I think like stability wise, like we're a little bit more confident in Hurts, Mahomes, and Allen. And the only thing that I will say into why I put them down here is there's just a little bit of projecting. We're pretty sure they're going to throw the ball more. We're pretty sure that Zay Flowers is going to be a nice improvement, that Odell is going to contribute this season, that Bateman's going to be healthy. We're pretty sure they're going to play faster, be a good offense, be healthier. We just don't 100% know. The same way, we're 100% sure the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Bills, they're going to be really good offenses. These 3 quarterbacks are going to produce. We don't 100% know with Lamar, so he's going to headline this next year, but definitely be 4th. And I think he, among everyone else that we're going to talk about today, has the best chance to be the number 1 overall quarterback, to be the MVP of the NFL, to really be someone you needed. Because Lamar could run for 1,500 yards. He could run for 15 touchdowns. Will we project that to happen? No. And I would actually project him a little bit less than Justin Fields, who we'll get to in a second. But such good upside. And I love drafting him this season because I really do think they're going to play faster. They're going to throw it a lot. And that's not a terrible thing for Lamar. So some people will be hesitant and be like, oh, if they're going to throw the ball a lot, then maybe that means his rushing numbers go down. I mean, maybe slightly. But most of his rushing numbers, they're not coming off of, running back carries. Or I think it's more the running back carries will be reduced and that those will turn to pass attempts. And there'll be plenty of times, even though they're not designing runs, if they're just throwing the ball a lot, well, that's a lot of scrambles, right? That's a lot of plays that were going to be a pass, but he ends up taking off. So I don't think his numbers are going to take a hit too much in the rushing department. And I think they're going to improve. The passing department, love him as a pick this season, but I wouldn't pick him right after. So if you get Hurts, Mahomes, Allen off the board, I would make sure at least half a round goes by. Then I'm drafting Lamar because there is a drop-off. I don't want to draft him right after those 3. Next up, we're going to go over Joe Burrow, if I can grab him here. Burrow's obviously awesome. He's obviously on a very stable offense. He obviously has, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. I wouldn't throw Tyler Boyd into like an elite category, but Tyler Boyd's at least, a quality pass catcher. But really just having Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the outside, just two really, really, really good wide receivers. We know the production is going to consistently be there for Joe Burrow. We also know the Bengals aren't going to just run the ball a ton, right? Like even in games they get up, they don't really sit on leads. They keep pushing. And so this isn't a situation, like we're actually going to talk about a little bit with Aaron Rodgers a little bit later. Like I'm a little bit scared with Rodgers that the Jets will win a lot of games. They'll have to be like competitive. They'll have to get up in those games, but I think they'll be like winning a lot of games and they'll be able to run the ball a lot. But I'm not scared of that with the Bengals, even though they're also going to win a ton of games, because it's more likely the Bengals get there through the air, whereas like it's possible the Jets get there on the ground. And then also when they get up, the Jets, I feel, could run the ball plenty, can play slower, play more conservative, run a lot, play the short passing game. Like Burrow is just going to keep chucking it to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So I don't really have any of those same concerns. Also, if we look at his like production, I mean, he's developing into one of the best quarterbacks in the game. He already is, but like he's been phenomenal. If you look at his underlying metrics, look at his fantasy production, goes from 17.4 to 19.6 to 21.9 points per game over his last 3 years. Obviously, that's with him developing with Jamar Chase, who's also one of the best wide receivers in the game. He's got the third most passing yards ever for a quarterback over the first 3 seasons. And again, he finished, fourth in points per game last season. He's in the same situation, if not better, because he's developing, and so is Chase. And also, if anything, nice little upgrade, Hayden Hurst to Irv Smith, potentially. We can't lock that in as an upgrade, but from everything they're saying, it seems like it's an upgrade for the offense just because Irv's going to really stretch the field a lot more than Hayden Hurst was able to. So I love Joe Burrow, especially an underdog. When you're able to get that like Chase, Higgins, Burrow stack, I have a lot of those, and it's a very, very high upside stack. Next up, quarterback 6, also going to the A tier, is Justin Herbert. Opens his career phenomenal, 22.2 points per game as a rookie, 22.4 in year 2. So you're like, okay, we're gonna get really good production. Last year, 16.5 points per game. I attribute that most to touchdowns. The team scored 13 fewer touchdowns last season than they did before, he scored 13 fewer touchdowns despite playing the same number of games as in 2021. I attribute it most to injuries. We know that Herbert was, injured early in the season, kind of playing through injury for a lot of the season. I don't think that was 100% to do with it, but like when you're injured, like, right, you're not the same, like you're just a little bit limited in what you can do. But it was mostly like who he was playing with, right? Keenan Allen, he was playing through injury for time, also missed a full 7 games. That's a really big chunk of the season, especially a big chunk of the fantasy season. Mike Williams missed effectively 5 games. And so you had those two kind of rotating in and out of the lineup, along with, again, Herbert himself kind of playing through injury. And so just not a great situation. Also, just sometimes you have a down year. The team as a whole just dropped in production last year. I think that goes right back up. And if we look at, how he's been, even when you factor that in, over the first 3 years of his career, he has the most passing yards ever for a quarterback. Like literally in the history of the NFL, the most passing yards ever over the first 3 seasons. And then when you think about, okay, what's different this year? It's like they added in Quentin Johnston, like a fantastic talent, someone who can really create yards after the catch. If they can stay healthy, if you can have Eckler, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, and Quentin Johnston on the field every play with Gerald Everett, who's a really solid pass-catching tight end. If you can have that on the field every play healthy, with a healthy Justin Herbert, I absolutely think he can finish as the quarterback 1, and we will be talking about him with Hurts, with Mahomes, with Allen as like a 3rd-round pick next season. I think that's in his range of outcomes. He just goes here because I think it's more likely for Lamar, more likely with Burrow, but I still love Herbert also because ADP discount. Like he goes way later than Lamar. He goes later than Joe Burrow. And I've seen Herbert fall as well. Whenever he falls, you got to pounce on that. He is such a good pick this season. But again, even though I do project him for around 14, 15 fewer points than Burrow. After him, another very high upside quarterback, and the last quarterback in A tier is Justin Fields. He's definitely the wild card of this group. You basically have to rank him here for the upside, right? I don't think you can put him any lower than this because he could, just like I said for Lamar, and Fields has more. Like Fields could run for, I'm not even kidding, like 1,700 rushing yards. Like probably not going to happen, but he could. He has unreal rushing upside. But it's the consistency. And it's really, do we know he's going to have these spiked performances and will they come more often? He was 27th in points per game through week 6 last season. That's not good, right? It caused a lot of people to draft him and then drop him or just keep him on free agency. He was then 3rd in points per game from week 7 on last year. But again, had he done that, had he been 3rd in points per game from week 7 on and consistently been at 25, 26, 27 points, like always, he'd be a 3rd round pick. Easy. The thing is, he averaged 25.4 points per game over those final 12 weeks, despite scoring more than 25, which was his average, 25.4. He scored more than 25 only 3 of the 12 weeks. You're like, how did he do that? Because he had 1 billion fantasy points in 2 of those games, and that really spikes his average. But he didn't have very high production in all of those weeks. It was just 2 really, really big games. His season-long pace from week 6 on, though, it was over 1,600 rushing yards. Again, only Lamar Jackson has that same rushing upside, and Fields has the most rushing upside of any quarterback in the NFL. So I can't rank him higher because we've just seen it more with Lamar, and I think Lamar's in such a good spot this year. And I'm pretty confident in saying Burrow and Herbert are just better quarterbacks. I think they'll have more consistent production, and they still have that same ceiling because they're awesome, and they have great pass catchers around them. But Fields, just because of that rushing upside, I think you have to have him here. And if he falls in drafts, absolutely pounce on that. I think him and Herbert should go in a very, very similar range, but again, Herbert a little bit before Justin Fields. B tier, a very, very small tier. We're going to start off with Trevor Lawrence. Probably one of my favorite picks. So I made the video, what was that, 2 weeks ago? I said right now Kirk Cousins was my highest rostered quarterback. Right behind that is Trevor Lawrence. I love Trevor Lawrence this season. He had phenomenal development into his 2nd season. And just it's tough to put into words how much better he was. He goes from 12 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. They change up the coaching staff, get that garbage out of there. 25 touchdowns to 8 interceptions last year. He was so good. And you look at the pass catchers, they obviously had that upgrade with Christian Kirk. But this year it's even better, right? Last year he was throwing to Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Marvin Jones, and then Evan Ingram as well, tight end. So they're replacing Marvin Jones now with Calvin Ridley. I mean, that's one of the biggest upgrades you could possibly have. Calvin Ridley is an awesome wide receiver, a phenomenal route runner. He is amazing. Still, I would say late prime of his career, but still kind of in that later portion of his prime. He's going to have an awesome year. We have seen this happen, right? We have seen Josh Allen getting Stephon Diggs. We have seen Joe Burrow adding in Jamar Chase. We've seen Tua adding in Tyreek Hill. It's when you add in a true alpha wide receiver, actually even Jalen Hurts getting A.J. Brown. When you add in this true alpha, it really helps the quarterback play. And when you think that quarterback was also already ascending into his 3rd year, the sky is the limit for Trevor Lawrence this season. I wouldn't call him mobile, but I'd call him mobile enough to produce numbers like Joe Burrow. Honestly, Mahomes. I wouldn't call Mahomes a mobile quarterback, but he's not a complete statue, right? When you have a statue in the pocket, that's tough because you basically have to throw for 303 touchdowns every single week if you want to produce. Lawrence will do enough on the ground to add in a little bit of points. He can score rushing touchdowns. So when you add that in to an insane ceiling in the passing department, insane potential for his development, I love him. I love Trevor Lawrence this season. I would draft a ton of him. Only other quarterback that I would throw into this range is Deshaun Watson. Have to put him last here because projecting. We are thinking that the Browns are going to be a really good offense this season. We're thinking he's going to improve from, he was dreadful last season. We're thinking he's going to get better than last season. We think they're going to throw it more. We think they're going to play faster, but we don't know yet. It's the same reason I can't put Lamar into that top tier. It's because we just don't know if that's going to be true. We don't know it with Watson. If we were 100% sure that he was going to play better, that they were going to play faster and throw it a ton more, okay. but we don't know 100% certain. But because those are made a possibility, and because he's produced amazing in the past, and because honestly, like, Chubb, Amari Cooper, who had that slight injury, it doesn't seem to be anything, Elijah Moore, that's a really, really solid trio of players. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I think, is underrated. I think he's a really good talent, a really good number 3, a nice deep threat. Like, I think because he's surrounded by that, because he is a talented player, the upside is obviously there. He's produced very well in the past when he's been put into a really good situation, and I think the situation is going to be really solid this season. So I'd put him here. I would say because he goes in like a similar-ish range of Trevor Lawrence, and because I really like the C tier as well, I don't end up with him as much. But when he falls, and especially on Underdog, if I'd already drafted Amari Cooper, if I'd already drafted Elijah Moore, if I think I'm going to be leaning towards David Njoku because maybe I don't have a tight end at that point, that's when I'd be going after him. I would say in a redraft league, I don't go after him as much because when I take him, I want to be taking him when I bet on the Browns offense, if that makes sense. Because like if he produces well, a lot of different players are going to be really good picks at their ADP. And so it's like I want to bet on everything. And because I don't do that as much in redraft leagues, I don't like go all in on an offense, I'm just a little bit less likely to do it. So I'll definitely lean towards like Trevor Lawrence. Like I definitely think Trevor Lawrence is a much better pick. C tier. This is the range where, so basically look at what we have right now. You've got this in like round 3, this like top tier. Then you've got this kind of in rounds like honestly 4 and 5. And then you come down to Trevor Lawrence, you're in kind of like, I mean, it depends if we're talking about underdog or redraft, but now we're looking at like round 6, 7 in general, if we kind of average everything out. Then there's a little bit of a gap, a little bit of a time period that should pass until you just hit this massive group. I think we're going to go over 9 quarterbacks in the C tier, this huge range where you're attacking this range. If you don't have a quarterback yet in like a 1 quarterback league, get a quarterback in this range. I wouldn't want to go outside of this range. If you're in a super flex league, my lean would be to get one of these top, 9 quarterbacks, get one of them, and then pair that with one from the C tier. And then if you want that third quarterback, go into like the D through F tier. That's how I would section it out. But basically, if you're in 1 quarterback, if you're in a super flex league, most of you will be faced with a decision in C tier. And my general thought in C tier is many, like I'm talking probably like 6 of these quarterbacks are separated by like 2 total points. Like they are all the exact same pick. Number 1, go with your gut feel. I feel pretty confident in how I've kind of ranked these quarterbacks right now. C tier is just coin flips. I mean, like if you really want to change things up, go for it. But I would say because that's the case, wait for value. See who falls, right? Be in the draft and be like, oh, someone reached on Aaron Rodgers, someone reached on Anthony Richardson, someone reached on Daniel Jones, but why is no one drafting Geno Smith? He keeps falling and falling in this draft. We'll make that a Geno Smith team. If the same thing happens with Kirk Cousins, if the same thing happens with Jared Goff, whoever ends up falling and becoming a really good value, I like pretty much everyone in this range a very similar amount. They all have like different positives and negatives, which we'll kind of go over, not like massively in depth, but we'll go over each one of these. But yeah, it's basically like everyone's kind of a similar pick. And so we'll kind of talk about this first one, Daniel Jones. I have him first. That doesn't mean I'm going out of my way to draft him first in this tier. It's a tier of 9 players. You might want to be the 8th or 9th to take a quarterback in this range. Or if Daniel Jones happens to be, let's say 5 from this tier go off the board and he becomes really good value, take him. You don't have to be last. You just want to be getting a good value. So Daniel Jones, I think he should be first because he was pretty good last season. 18 points per game, was 9th in scoring. They add in Darren Waller. That's going to be a really good addition to the team. But also just that rushing upside, right? He had 5 games over 65 rushing yards. He had a 68-yard 2-touchdown game, 107-yard 1-touchdown game, 91-yard 2-touchdown game. So like, a lot of different like really, really spiked weeks. That's what we want. And you add that into like good potential in the passing game. Also, I know we always make fun of the Giants because like they don't really have a number 1 wide receiver. They just have like 7 or 8 wide receiver 2s. But there is, a little bit of like security in the fact that like they do have a lot of really quality wide receiver 2s. And so it's not going to be a situation where everyone gets hurt and he's throwing to absolute scrubs. He's going to have, decent wide receivers every week to go along with Darren Waller and hopefully Saquon Barkley. The one thing I'd point out with Saquon is it's not actually some like massive risk having Saquon potentially holding out, because like worst case scenario, Saquon holds out. Well, they're not running the ball with the scrubs they have behind Saquon. They're probably just going to throw it a ton more, do a bunch more like read option with Daniel Jones. If anything, it could be a net positive. And so if the worst case is a potential net positive, I think people might potentially overreact, see that happen, see maybe like, them potentially not be as good scoring. Their win total is not going to change because running backs don't matter that much. But point being, it's not actually a risk. And if people assign it a risk and he drops an ADP, I take advantage of that. One thing I'll say is I don't actually draft a ton of him because that hasn't happened. Basically, Daniel Jones doesn't really fall very much in drafts. I think because he's so locked in. Like there's going to be someone in your draft that's like, okay, yeah, I mean, the rushing's there. The increase in skill players is there. Why wouldn't I really want to draft him? It's not as much like no one wants to take Daniel Jones the way that like some people don't want to take, let's just go with our next one, Tua. You're going to be in some leagues where just no one wants Tua because of the concussions. And if that happens in your league, pounce on that because I think he's going to be really good this season. Also, it's not like a huge deal. I was kind of thinking about this the other day. It's like, okay, so he is the quarterback 11 right here. I think by ADP, it's like the exact same thing. I'll have ADP. Actually, I probably won't have ADP on the screen, to be honest. But ADP-wise, he's the same. Maybe I'll mention if anything is like super different. ADP-wise, honestly, the top three is going to be the same. Lamar's going to be 4. Burrow's going to be 5. Fields might flip with Herbert, but depending on the site, that's pretty much the same. Pretty much everyone's going to have Lawrence and Watson kind of next. And then just this C tier is going to be an absolute mess for all the rankings. If you really want to see ADP, I have 2 completely free pages on the website. You can see ADP for every site. On there, you can see like the best values, all that stuff. You can see people's ADP over time. It's all completely free. I would just use that if you want to check different ADPs. But yeah, this is where he goes, right? For where he's going, like let's say Tua gets concussed in week 7, is done for the season. Are you going to lose your league? No. You drafted the 11th quarterback off boards. It was somewhere in like the middle to mid-late rounds. There will be someone on free agency. Like if he was going in round 3, Patrick Mahomes, let's say you draft him, he gets injured in week 7, you miss him for the rest of the season. Well, that really hurts. You lost your 3rd round pick. The quarterback 11, I mean, that's not really that same risk. And so I feel like he probably is going a little bit too late because if you guaranteed us 17 full weeks, he's obviously going to outperform his ADP. I mean, he's got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That's all you need, right? And like phenomenal coaching, like he's going to be fantastic. So I feel like I probably should be drafting a little bit more of him because again, that risk doesn't really matter all that much. Next up, we've got Dak Prescott. And another one that it's like, I thought that I would draft a little bit more of him this season. I've drafted a little bit less than I anticipated, but I think it's also because he's another player like Daniel Jones. He doesn't really fall that much. Most people can agree that adding in Brandon Cooks is going to really, really help this offense. They needed someone to go downfield. He's going to really help that out. Most people can agree that another year removed from the torn ACL, Michael Gallup's probably going to be better than last season. And most people can agree that, having Pollard over Zeke's going to improve the offense, especially in the passing game, and that CeeDee Lamb is pretty good at football, right? Most people can agree on all of those things. And so you're not going to be in a league where Dak Prescott really craters in a draft. And so I like him a lot, but again, if my tendency is in this tier, trying to get some of the craters, I don't end up with him a lot because he doesn't crater all that much. But if he happens to in your league, or if you just want to go out of your way, get him. Don't do it ahead of ADP. None of these C tier players should be ahead of ADP. But if at ADP, totally fine drafting him. Kirk Cousins, after that. I do know a lot of people are out on Kirk Cousins because the ceiling isn't crazy, and I sort of agree. But also, I mean, think about last 3 years with Jefferson, right? He's been the quarterback 11, 11, and 8. So he's going 13th by ADP. I believe he's the 13th quarterback in the rankings right here. So when you think about that value, you're like, okay, just like baseline what he's produced, you're getting a value. 11, 11, 8, and now he is 13th. And then you think, okay, what's different? Well, now he's got a full off season with TJ Hawkinson, and they just upgraded Adam Thielen to Jordan Addison, who maybe we don't know in year 1, and maybe that's people's hesitation is like, okay, if Addison can't put it together in year 1, because he's going to be a great wide receiver, maybe it takes him a year or 2 to like fully break out. Maybe that's in people's minds, but I mean, I really like Addison. I think he's a great player. I think he's going to do really well in year 1, and so that's not a concern for me. And then also when you think about it, it's like, okay, they have Madison right now, if they don't do anything else, Madison's not a player that you give, 25 carries every week to. And if they don't trust the backups all that much, because I don't think they trust Ty Chandler or Dwayne McBride like that much, Kenny Wangwu, I think they still have on the team. They don't trust these players like a ton. And maybe they'll perform really well in camp, and they will. But I think the point is, they're not going to run a ton. They are probably going to lead the league in pass attempts. And if he leads the league in pass attempts per game, and they also have Hawkinson, Jefferson, they also have Addison, they have Osborne, who's had like a really, really good camp. They've got Madison in the passing game. Like, if they put all those players with the most pass attempts in the league, like, how does he underperform in ADP? Like, I understand maybe saying he can't be top 5, but how is he not like a top 12 quarterback if that's his situation around him? And what, are they going to give Madison like 20 rushing touchdowns? Like, no, like, they're going to throw a ton of touchdowns, throw a ball a ton. I don't see a world where he disappoints at this ADP. And that's why I have him more than any other quarterback. It's him and Trevor Lawrence. I just don't see paths to either one of them like truly failing. And when you look at ADP, you get them at a nice discount from, Lamar, Burrow, Herbert, Fields, discount into Trevor Lawrence. And then I have him projected the same as Daniel Jones to a Dak, but he comes at a little bit of an ADP discount there as well. And some people just don't like him, and so he's going to fall in drafts. If that ever happens to you, take advantage. Same thing, honestly, like almost identical commentary, except take out the pass attempts per game thing for Geno Smith. I don't see a world where Geno Smith has a really bad year unless last season was like a complete fluke and he's going to go back to being bad. But like, he was really good last year. I think he's going to be really good this year. You look at the pass catchers. I mean, my goodness, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and now adds in JSN, who I think most people think it's either him or Quentin Johnston were the best wide receiver in the draft class. I think JSN was, and I think he fits this team beautifully. I mean, like, it wasn't great for fantasy because I wanted him to land on a team where he could be the wide receiver 1. But you throw JSN into the slot and you run a ton of 3 wide receiver sets, no one is going to be able to guard that. I know they love their 2 tight end sets, but just throw 1 tight end out there, just have these 3 wide receiver sets, put JSN in the slot, and this passing offense is going to be unreal. They also added in Charbonnet. It's just like a guarantee that the run game is going to be good as well. Like, he's just locked in. I mean, Geno Smith was what? The quarterback 5 last season. Now he's going at a huge discount after getting an improved situation in his second year as the starter here. Like, everything points to a really good year. Kirk Cousins, Geno Smith, awesome picks in this general range. After that, a little bit of a risky one, and it's Anthony Richardson. And some people definitely have him earlier in this. I can't move him up, and I've tried so hard, guys. Like, I have tried incredibly hard to move Anthony Richardson up in the rankings, and I just can't really do it. He's the most athletic quarterback in the history of the NFL. He's going to have a ton of rushing touchdowns. He's going to have a ton of rushing yards. I just can't get the passing numbers to fit. I can't get enough rushing yards to move him up anymore in the rankings. We're not 100% sure he's going to start the year, but he's going to start the season very early. I wouldn't worry about that. In this range, if you're in a redraft league, and on Underdog as well, I mean, you're drafting 2 quarterbacks anyways, so I wouldn't worry. Like, if you want to draft like Geno and Anthony Richardson, start Geno to start the year. If Richardson starts in week 3, so be it. See kind of how he plays. If he truly breaks out, he's running for like, 70 yards and a touchdown every week, and you want to, trade Geno, you want to honestly cut Geno, like whatever happens there. But I would say like you're drafting 2 quarterbacks because you just don't know. I mean, the risk could be pretty high that he could have like a Justin Fields like early career, right? Justin Fields was awesome last season, but remember before that, remember the first part of last season, he's had a very, very low floor. That's a risk with Anthony Richardson, because also like I like Pittman, but what? Pittman, Pierce, and they've got the rookie Josh Downs. Like, it's not a prolific group of pass catchers, and so I like him. I love the upside long term, year 1. It just hasn't been a player I've been drafting a ton because also he goes earlier. Like, he goes like pretty much right here in this range. Well, if I like these quarterbacks more and they go later, why wouldn't I just end up with them? After him, we've got Aaron Rodgers. Again, this is a huge tier. This is what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th player in C tier, the range that a lot of you are going to draft quarterbacks in. I alluded to my only concern with Rodgers before. Rodgers is an elite quarterback. He has an elite group of pass catchers. If you force Rodgers to have, top 5 in pass attempts, he would probably end up as a top 5 quarterback this season. My worry is that he plays slow. The Jets are a really good team. They have a phenomenal defense. There will be a lot of second halves where he's really slowing down the pace, where they're running the ball a ton, and it's like he's hyper efficient. Maybe the pass attempts don't really get there. And so I think that's why I'm just not able to project him, into like, let's say the B tier with Trevor Lawrence, with Deshaun Watson, but another quarterback that definitely falls in drafts, I'm 1,000% fine having on my team. And honestly, it would probably be a good one to pair with Richardson as well. After that, Russell Wilson, the 8th quarterback in this range. I don't have a strong take on Wilson this season. Some people are all in because I think Sean Payton's going to go in there, turn things around immediately. Some people are completely out on him, given just how bad he was last season. And I understand both sides. And I think because I understand both sides, I'm in the middle, right? I don't have a super strong take. I think Sean Payton's going to improve things. Does he improve things enough to bring them from like the very bottom to the top? I don't know. Maybe not right away. But do I also think that like Wilson's going to be as bad as last season if Judy can stay fully healthy, if Tim Patrick is back this season, if Marvin Mims can really improve their deep presence, their deep passing attack? I don't think so. And so it's like, I really do think it's somewhere in the middle, and somewhere in the middle is basically right here in fantasy, someone that if he falls, I'll attack. I will not reach on Russell Wilson this season. Final quarterback in this massive tier is Jared Goff. And honestly, he has sneaky upside this season. I don't think there's really a world where Goff finishes this season as like a top 5 quarterback. To be honest, no one left really has that in their range of outcomes. But he's kind of sneaky. I mean, he was a quarterback 15 last season. And that was despite, you obviously all remember Jamal Williams running for 1 billion touchdowns, right? 17 rushing touchdowns. Detroit scored the 2nd most rushing touchdowns of any team last season. That's going to hurt your quarterback play, especially when quarterback has 0 of those rushing touchdowns. And so it's like, if variance kind of goes to his way, that's a positive. He did lose Hawkinson. Jameson Williams suspended to start the season. And I wouldn't say they're such a well-coached team and they have awesome running backs. And so it's like, do I really think variance swings that way? Probably not, right? Like, I don't think Amon-Ra St. Brown, I don't think Sam Laporta are going out there and scoring 15 touchdowns each. I do think they're going to use both David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs a lot. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns. And so I don't think variance swings that way. He throws for 40 touchdowns to all these like backup wide receivers and that the running backs aren't producing as much. I don't think that'll happen. But it's at least a possibility that maybe like Montgomery and Gibbs have 5 or 6 receiving touchdowns each. And maybe Laporta does spike in touchdowns, and maybe Goff can get up to like 35 passing touchdowns, and that'll open up the door to that increased production. It would just be like, well, he's not going to have the rushing. So he kind of he's going to really break out, needs to have that like 35 touchdowns. But again, he's the last player in this tier, and he falls. He goes really late in drafts. He goes after all of these guys. Some drafts I've gotten him like, 10, 15 spots behind ADP as that last one. And so if that happens, I am completely fine doing it, because I also don't think there's really a world where he like completely busts, right? I don't think they're going to run for 4 touchdowns every week, and I think they're going to be really good offense. And also, second half, when Jameson Williams comes back, when he can develop later in the season, when your fantasy championships are, he's going to be a player that could spike later down the stretch. D tier, another mini tier. It's basically 2 safe quarterbacks that neither of them have a ton of upside, but also neither one of them is like, neither one of them is going to be terrible, right? I don't think either one of them is going to finish like 25th in points per game. It's really just that like, neither one of them is going to have some amazing season and be someone that's like a true league winner. I do know Stafford had nearly 4,900 passing yards, 41 touchdowns back in 2021. He was a quarterback 6, and so he has it in his range of outcomes. I just don't think that sort of season is going to happen again if he's really only throwing to Cooper Kupp. It's like Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, and I think Puka, probably their number 3. That's not great. We know that Akers isn't like a prolific pass catcher. We know that Higbee is good, probably going to have a good season, probably going to outperform his ADP. But as you mention all those names and you're like, I don't know. If Stafford's going to run for hopefully 100 yards this year, I just don't see any upside. And it's a similar thing with Derek Carr. I do think the Saints are going to run it a ton. I think he's surrounded by a lot of talent, but if he's not mobile, he's just consistently mediocre. Like, he has maxed out at 17 points per game over the last 6 years. He typically hovers around 15 points per game as low and wide or quarterback 2 production. Like, that's what these two are. They are mid to low end quarterback 2s. Someone that, like, if you kind of missed out in a super flex league, you can grab as that quarterback 2. If you have a stack that goes with it on Underdog, you can do that. If you're drafting them in a redraft league, I don't know. Like, you better be in like a 14-team league. If you're starting them as your first quarterback in a 12-team league, I just don't love it. I think there's other quarterbacks you could go to. E tier. Going to have a number of different quarterbacks here. And we are kind of in the range where it's like, you should probably have quarterback figured out by this point. These really are, underdog players. They are super flex league players. If you are in a redraft league, I don't love it. And then I guess everyone else is going to go in F tier, but we'll pull them up in a second. We see it's Brock Purdy, it's Kenny Pickett, Jordan Love, and Ryan Tannehill. You could argue for pretty much any order here, and I'd be fine with it. I think that all of them have a pretty slim path to even high-end quarterback 2 production, not even quarterback 1. I don't think any of them really have a path to that. Purdy has the best chance because he's surrounded by so much talent. He's got such good coaching that, like, yeah, in that system, he could certainly have a good year. The problem is we have less than half a year of production from him, so we just don't know yet, right? We just don't know if he is a high-end quarterback or not. And if he wasn't, like, if he had this production, he was Trevor Lawrence, right? And Trevor Lawrence was this insane prospect. Everyone knew he was going to be good. It was just like, when is he going to break out? And then it happened in year 2. If that had been the case with Purdy, it'd be much easier to get behind him. But he wasn't a high-end prospect, and it just kind of came out of nowhere. And so it's difficult to know, was this just like 2 months of really good production and he'll drop back down? Because there is a risk, right? Because they have other quarterbacks, like Trey Lance could still start games this season. We just don't know. So it's a risk, obviously, but he's got the most upside because he proved last season that he has upside. I would say that, like, the case for Pickett and Tannehill is just that they're surrounded by talent, right? Like, I don't think either of them are going to have these insane years, but both of them have a lot of skill players around them that are really talented. Also, Tannehill was the quarterback 7 overall back in 2020, so he's done it before. Pickett has never done it before, but he's got a little bit of mobility. So I know Pickett has never shown upside. I don't think he ever has a 20-point game to his name, but and that's for like fantasy, obviously. He is a little bit mobile, and so he's got that upside that, like, if he develops in year 2, and he's got, Deontay, he's got Pickens maybe developing, Pat Freiermuth developing, 2 really good running backs, maybe Allen Robinson helps in the red zone. Like, if he's got all of this surrounding him and he develops as a player and he runs a little bit, he could have, solid quarterback 2 production. But again, we're in the E tier. Like, that's what we're hoping for, is solid quarterback 2 production. I would say the one I'm most excited about is Purdy. And then I would say Tannehill, just because he goes way later than even these 3. He goes super late in drafts. He's effectively free. And if you've got Hopkins and, being awesome, Burks really developing, and Derrick Henry, you could score a lot of touchdowns. He'd get lucky with touchdowns. He's been good in the past. He's been highly efficient in the past. I think he's like a really, really, really strong pick. Especially, I did the last mock draft Monday was a super flex league. If you want to go with your first quarterback in this top 9, then you want to grab one in the C tier, and then you want to end with Ryan Tannehill, I think it's a really good strategy. Or on Underdog, if you want to draft like one of these top 3, completely wait until like the 18th round and draft Tannehill, I think that's a fantastic strategy. Everyone else is pretty much a pile of garbage, and I would not draft any of them. You could make a case for Kyler Murray, and I think it would be a fine case, but I don't love it for a number of different reasons. One, okay, for those who are listening on the podcast, I'll just go through the order I just threw up on the screen. Mac Jones, Jimmy Garoppolo, Bryce Young, Kyler, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, CJ Stroud, and Baker. So some people look at Kyler down here and be like, well, why would you have him this low? It really is because, one, I don't know that he plays a lot of games this season because I think they're going to try and tank. And obviously, the best way to tank is to have Kyler Murray on the bench because he's a really good quarterback. Number 2, even if they stop doing that, they get him onto the field, they're going to make sure he's not running it. And so remember all those games when he had, like, I believe it was like a shoulder injury, maybe an ankle injury at some point. His production really took a hit when they weren't having him getting designed runs and stuff. They're not going to give him any designed runs this season. He's coming off a major injury. They are not, I don't think they're going to put him on the field really at all. But if they do, they're going to be like, okay, you can go on the field, but you're a pocket passer. Like, you're not running the football. And that's his whole thing. And then you look at his pass catchers and you're like, okay, well, that's not good either. You think they're probably not going to play super fast, because why would they? I think they're going to play really slow this season, run it a ton. Like, it's just a horrific situation. And so I put him down here so that really no one gets too excited and drafts him. But yeah, I mean, maybe you could say, okay, Bryce Young develops in year one, is a really good quarterback, but even him, who's he throwing to? It's the corpse of Adam Thielen. It's hopefully Jonathan Mingo as, like, I hope the number one this season, but hopefully they use him. But it's like, there's not really a bunch there, and he's so unproven, and there's so many awesome quarterbacks. Again, look at the C tier, just draft one of them. Why are you going down to Young? You could argue for Jimmy Garoppolo if he has a full season with Devonta Adams there. You could argue for Desmond Ridder because he's got Kyle Pitts, he's got Drake London, he's got Bijan. It's a lot of really good players. But again, it's not an inspiring range at all. I don't believe that anyone in the F tier should be on your team unless you are in a super flex league and they're your third quarterback. Even on Underdog, I rarely draft them. If I happen to draft Evans and Godwin, I might take a shot on Baker, but I don't even know if Baker's going to be a starter all season. If I happen to draft a few Texans, I don't have a quarterback yet, I'll take Stroud. It's like, if I happen to start a stack, don't have that last quarterback, I'll be like, sure, give me a little bit of exposure to Desmond Ridder. Other than that, you're not going out of your way. And if you're in a one quarterback league, there's just no reason to draft any of them. Again, for those of you in one quarterback leagues, my lean is best value in this top 9. And if you can't get that, best value in C tier. And if you can't get a good value, just take whoever's left in C tier, because I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. Super flex leagues, I want one from this top 9. I want one in C tier and one below, probably in B or E tier. On Underdog, you're just looking for best values. I typically do draft one in this range, but if not, I'm probably double dipping in this range down here for C tier. So that is the general landscape of quarterback this season. If you want to see my exact rankings, whether it's Underdog, Superflex leagues, regular leagues, you can see that on my website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. If you want to see all those rankings for free, not sign up for any of the packages, then all you have to do is sign up for your first Underdog account today using promo code FFA. They will match your first deposit up to $100, and you get all my rankings for free. That is all the redraft rankings. You will get the custom rankings for free. You'll get Underdog rankings for free, Underdog articles, all Underdog access as well, but all the normal rankings as well as on my website. Again, 100% free. All you got to do is make your first deposit on Underdog, sign up with promo code FFA. It's at least a $10 deposit on the site. So tomorrow will be some sort of breakdown video. Friday will be some sort of top 5 video. I don't know which ones. And then Saturday, we'll again look at the market, see how ADPs are moving, see how the market is changing for different positions. And we'll check that out again on Saturday. That, my friends, is in this one. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, how about hitting the like button and how about subscribe to the channel if you're new here. Thanks for watching.